What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I'm Connor O'Gara. Will, congrats on your national title. How does it feel? LSU, I realized the drought was really, really long. You had to wait a whole 2 years between natties. I mean, it just had to feel like monkey off the back, finally seeing your team as the last one standing in Omaha.
You were like, congrats on your national title. I was like, hold on, I thought I'd get more at bats. Hold on. No, that's exciting, man. It's super exciting. What Jay Johnson has brought to like Baton Rouge and watching LSU become this power program again. And I mean, that was just such a fun team to watch in Baton Rouge this last season specifically. You know, not the most talented team, but a team that was really well constructed and just kind of funky, just kind of a nasty team that had a lot of characters on it. Nasty in a good way. You know, like they got on base, they played smart baseball, they were a joy to watch. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those fun teams to think about. And you know you're a good organization when a scrappy team like that can win a championship. That's when you know you're really cooking. So shout out to them, man.
So in the 5 biggest revenue college sports, which I'd say college football, men's basketball, women's basketball, softball, baseball, is there one that I'm missing, or do you consider that's the 5 biggest revenue college sports? SEC this school year wins 3 of those national titles, and it's a down year for the SEC.
You know, the sky is falling. We keep saying it on this here podcast. We just might as well get our jobs, Connor.
Yeah. Sky definitely falling. It was a good weekend, though. It was a great weekend. Got to watch a little bit of that college baseball while we were on vacation in Dunedin. Had just a lovely, lovely time with the family. They were willing to come down to Florida. Dunedin is kind of our happy place, our little escape, 2 hours away from us, and we had just a really nice extended weekend from Thursday to Sunday. And man, I'm amazed that it's only June 25th, because the last 2 months of my life have been every single weekend, big time activities, tons and tons going on. But I feel so refreshed, and I want to throw this idea at you. I'm curious if you've done this before, and if people listening to this have done this before. I had a buffer day, not a travel day post vacation, but a buffer day. A get back on track, do everything around the house day that I built in with my vacation, where I said, you know what? I had my brother and his wife were in town. They made the drive. They flew in from Lexington to Sanford, and then stayed with us during the bookends of the trip. You know, we drove the 2 hours down to Dunedin together, and then they stayed with us on Sunday night. They flew back to Lexington on Monday, but they were flying back early on Monday morning. And I said, you know what? I could, in theory, tell my bosses I'll work, half day or something like that, and I'll just kind of get back to the grind. And then I thought, what would be really nice is to have that buffer day on Monday, where you do all the grocery shopping, all the yard work, all the unpacking, everything that doesn't have to do with getting back on track from a work standpoint. And that way, when you do come back to work, you don't have all that other stuff just kind of looming over your head. I'm not saying it's a life hack. Changed my life a little bit. It did. I recommend the buffer day. Make it a thing, not the travel day. The buffer day is, if you have the means to do it in your vacation budget, whatever it is where you work, make it happen, because it made my return so much easier than it could have been.
Yeah, man. I mean, you are such an adult, bro. You showed up and did yard work and grocery shopping. I love that. That's why I love talking to you. I'm definitely a big believer in like a travel day. So I very rarely will like plan a day where I do a lot of things the day that I go into a vacation, to where I'm like, okay, I'm going to get in, get some sleep, reset, and then start my trip fresh. I think that's even more of a pro tip, because I'm with you. You know that feeling like when you get done with a work trip and you're back on Monday and you're just like, I don't remember how to be a person? That feels like a completely like it's like an airlock in a spaceship. It just completely like reacclimates you to the climate,
It did. It absolutely did. And I came back feeling extremely refreshed, and we were good to go, be able to dive into it this week. We have a great pod lined up. Great pod. We're going to discuss the new era of We Want Bama. We Want Bama. Is it dead? Maybe.
I used to pray for times like this, right?
Buddy, you are not alone in that. I can assure you of that. Pat Dooley is going to join us in a bit, talk some current and historical Florida things, plus a really interesting time in Florida history that's been kind of largely forgotten, that he that he's going to be digging into for a future documentary, a future 30 for 30. We talked about that as well. And we're going to close with Lad of the Week. But first, as we've been doing for a while now, kind of talk to you about Dabble. I know NBA season is over. We have an NBA champ, the Oklahoma City Thunder, which look, that game on Sunday night, one of the bigger bummers ever. Hopefully you got your props refunded if you had any sort of Halliburton stuff going on or whatever. But if you are one of those people that loves being able to watch baseball, but you need a little bit of a extra incentive, Dabble is going to hook you up. They are one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space, and they've wasted no time making a name for themselves. Dabble's social function is second to none, and they offer a wide variety of sports for making picks. Like I said, MLB is going on right now, and they have daily offers for that to be able to track the action. And if you feel like, hey, look, Cal Raleigh, just going to keep hitting bombs, just going to keep doing one of the most ridiculous things we've ever seen a Major League Baseball catcher do, that's going to be the place that you're going to want to go and get on the action. Use the promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Will, the new era, I think, of We Want Bama is here. And maybe it's just the post-life era, the reincarnation of We Want Bama. I don't know what to call it yet. Time will tell. But it came right on time. It came a year after Saban steps down at Alabama. And don't you know it, anyone on Alabama's schedule can now call out Bama, and not in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way like you would see a few years ago if you would turn on College Game Day and watch Montana State fans saying, "We want Bama." In a real legitimate, we are playing you this year and we want to face you. In case you missed it, in the month of June, 2 quarterbacks who have to check the height requirements before they go on a roller coaster have called out Bama ahead of their 2025 matchups.
Oh, that's cool. You're calling people short now? Wow.
I can do this as a 5'8" guy who was just at a water park. I peeked over.
You got in. You're like, hey, we gotta check y'all. Okay, we gotta get up to this measuring stick right here.
Look, when you're on the shorter side of things, or if you're on the bigger side of things, you deal with this in a different sort of way. But if you're on the shorter side of things in life, sometimes you just peek over. You're like, all right, 48 inches. We're good. I'm tall enough. I'm fine. I saw that kid in line. I wasn't sure if he was going to make it, but I'm the adult here. I need to just make sure that I'm good and I'm not being asked in public to stand up behind this height requirement thing. These are 2 short quarterbacks. We can say that, who have called out.
Really quick,
Bama.
Connor, this is another part of my life in Louisiana that sounds made up, but I actually grew up almost across the street from a water park, and of course it was called Blue Bayou.
That's actually really good.
It's in a Lil Wayne song.
Is it blue, the normal spelling?
Yeah.
Okay. And the water park is just blue. Blue Bayou's good, man. That's good.
I was getting down to Blue Bayou when I was a kid, man. They had funnel cakes. I was a little chubby Eric Cartman kid. I was in there eating funnel cakes, hitting the slides, man. You just brought me back to a great time in my life. Thank you.
You have to have beignets at Blue Bayou.
I don't remember if they had beignets, actually. I just remember digging in when I was there. The food was good.
Love a water park, man. Absolutely love it. Earlier in the month, Diego Pavia went on Bussin' with the Boys. As many would expect, he said many things that made the rounds. And one of those things was how he has no doubt that Vandy has the guys to beat Bama again, and that their goal was to win a national title. We can get into the inner workings of Diego Pavia and why this is actually the best thing for Vandy, even if it ends up being a 3-9 season, which I'm not sitting here today telling you it's going to be 3-9. I'm not sitting here today telling you they're going to be 8-4. But to me, a guy who already beat Bama has earned the right to feel confident. And Diego Pavia, certainly not lacking confidence. We can say that. As for Thomas Castellanos, different story. Very, very different story. Castellanos, a guy that we've talked about on the show, he is at Florida State now. He got there after it didn't work out at UCF. It didn't work out again last year at Boston College, and he was benched in the middle of a 7-6 season. He ends up quitting the team. He told On3, quote, "They don't have Nick Saban to save them. I just don't see them stopping me." we can get to the inner workings of Castellanos and why this is actually the worst thing for Alabama's week 1 opponent, Florida State.
This might be the worst quote I've ever heard an athlete say. Can you really think, like, not like cancelable, but like bulletin board? This is the worst quote I think I've ever heard. They don't have Nick Saban to save them. I just don't see them stopping me. Who? Castellanos? Who?
Castellanos, first of all.
Castellanos, you're right.
Different than and that's a drive to deep left field. Castellanos. That is Castellanos. We're talking about Castellanos today.
Castellanos. Okay, sorry.
Although I think Mr. Tom Brenneman might be on the call for a certain Castellanos game this year. But
wow,
you're right.
In the ACC, so he's stuck with Tom Brenneman again. That is crazy, bro.
He wrecked the ACC his last 2 years. I can't remember the exact iteration of that quote, but like he took the ACC by storm. He said, apparently, this guy just gave Bama 2 months of bulletin board material before that opener. To me, his call out is more telling than Diego Pavia's. We are entering a time in which calling out Bama is very in vogue because, as Castellanos said, maybe regrettably so, Nick Saban isn't there to save them. Saban wasn't there to save Bama last year when it lost to 3 unranked teams. And that's important because in the entire Saban era, Bama lost to 4 unranked teams. Chris Lowe just wrote something for ESPN on the college football records that'll never be broken. One of them is Nick Saban winning 100 consecutive games against unranked teams. That spanned from 2007, Louisiana Monroe, to 2021, Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M. That might not sound like that long of a time, but think about this and put it in perspective with your own life. For me, the bookends of that streak of losses to unranked opponents that Alabama suffered, that is when I was in high school and when I was in my 30s.
I mean, that's insanely long of a time in college football. That is, and I mean, to your point too, it's not like teams need Nick Saban to stop Tommy Castellanos. Sorry, I'm a double L appreciator. Come on now.
Yeah, it's an AA, right? That's
right.
What it's supposed to be. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
plenty of teams have stopped him without having Nick Saban. So like that's the funniest part. It's not like that's a prerequisite to stop him. I think that's so funny, dog. Yeah, 2007. I mean, we're talking about like Creed is still on the radio, bruh. Like, what are we doing here?
Whoa.
I'm saying the radio, bruh. I'm saying we're listening to the radio in our cars on the way to school. I mean, maybe I don't even have a car in 2007, obviously. But, like, I'm back in Louisiana in 2000. That is so long ago to think of how long it has been since Bama has lost, like, to teams like FSU, basically.
I don't like any sort of Creed potential cheap shot. You know that. There are a lot of places to hit. That's not one of them. I will not stand for that. We will bleep that out. Insert other band here. Let's what's the most 2007 thing we can think of? Fall Out Boy?
That was 2 years after Rockstar by Nickelback came out. That was on the radio. Rockstar by Nickelback was still on the radio.
Tough one.
Yeah,
it's a tough one. The most impressive thing Saban did is that streak. And think about it. A team just won a national title last year with a November loss to an unranked team. Okay. We want Bama, just as a premise, something that Joseph Goodman wrote an entire book about. We had him on the show a few years ago talking about that. It's somewhere in that bookshelf. You could probably not see it. That premise was supposed to just embody this feeling that the little guy could take on anything and anyone, including even mighty Bama. As in, we are so confident in what we are doing that we can take on the world. It also, I think, helped that We Want Bama is just built perfectly for that sort of chant. Much like how I think 5% of Derek Jeter's lore can be attributed to the fact that Yankee fans could so easily chant Derek Jeter, 4 syllables. You don't have to like pause. You're like, Aaron Judge. It just doesn't come off the tongue the same sort of way. When it's 4 syllables like that, it just kind of pops. But it takes a certain school to take on that We Want Bama mantra. It takes a school that's in the midst of some ridiculous run and is believed to be overachieving or just playing out of its skull, whatever you want to call it. We Want Bama isn't a chant for the Georgias, LSUs, and Ohio States of the world when they're at their best. Now, they've made those chants when they are not at their best, but there are still some of those moments in which you go, you know what? Oh, well, you got vibration going on left and right here.
Is that what's going on? There we go.
Yeah, phone's blowing up. Is somebody chanting "We Want Bama" at you right now?
I hope nobody got traded, man. That's what the last 3 days have been.
Okay, nobody traded from LSU baseball?
Dude, the NBA has been crazy. Anyway, sorry about that.
Okay, no, we're good. We're good. Just want to make sure you're not getting an Amber Alert going off something right now. We're good. But it's just not. It's not something that you hear for people at that level. And it's, it could be compared to if a team like Georgia is going to do something like "We Want Bama." It's almost like a blue blood in college basketball rushing the court. You just probably not reserved for someone like you. To call out Bama is to feel like, hey, we're ready, even though a team usually isn't ready for Bama at all. And when you lose just 2 games to teams that are outside of the top 15 of the AP poll from November of 2007 to September of 2021, you're very likely not ready. Richard Johnson wrote about this back in 2017 for SB Nation, and how there's just this massive divide for fans and players when it comes to that premise and when it got going. One of the coaches that he talked to said that it's a fan chant because they're not the ones who have to line up across from Bama. They're just not. And players just don't act like this. They just don't have to. Why would you? But it became this movement that really defined college football in the 2010s, where you bring your sign to College Game Day or whatever sort of ESPN game you're on, and it's a tongue-in-cheek way to say that your team is worthy of being put on that stage with the class of the sport. Because remember, politicking always has been and always will be a part of college football, even in the expanded playoff era. The most infamous "We Want Bama," it wasn't even technically a "We Want Bama." It was "Alabama, you're next." Who could forget? I think Marler has that tattooed on his lower back. I haven't checked. It might be. The Vandy defensive lineman, 2017, was feeling very good. Literally moments after Vandy just beat number 18 Kansas State. And he's like, "Alabama, you're next." I don't want to do the imitation full on, but that was as close as I'll get to it. You can go find the clip. It's still all over the internet. And then 59-0 happened in the midst of a Bama national title season. Vandy did not make it to a bowl game. Diego Pavia might also be wearing that uniform. And there are certain people that are going to react to him saying, of course, I feel like we have the guys to beat Alabama again. And there are certain people that are going to say, this is Alabama, you're next all over again. But him saying that with such confidence, which he did, go back and watch the clip. This is someone who didn't even have to think twice about it. Him saying that he thinks that they'll beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa has just an entirely different vibe after the year that Bama had. And not even just because of the fact that Vandy beat Bama. I would have been stunned, absolutely stunned, if Diego Pavia on Bussin' with the Boys, after talking, about how confident he is and whatnot, I would have been stunned if he said, "Nah, I think we got lucky last year. Ryan Williams was right when he compared us to ants. I think Bama's going to be the sledgehammer. I expect to be humbled in Tuscaloosa." If Diego Pavia says that, test that man for drugs.
Yeah, because that's not who he is either. That's the thing. He has been a guy who has always bet on himself. And he has been the king of the state of Alabama, right? We've talked about it. Like, he has had success against Auburn. He's had success against Bama. So from his standpoint, I think that's almost, I'm not going to say it's humble necessarily, but it's real. It's like, I've already done it. I've already beaten Alabama. I'm not going to go in here and tell you we can't do it again because I saw it happen and I made it happen.
I would never expect a quarterback that has already beaten Bama to get up to the microphone and say something that suggests they got lucky. That's just not the way that those guys are going to be wired. If you could interview every single returning Bama defeater, what are they going to say? What do you think Johnny Manziel would have said in the offseason, who is Diego Pavia's number one idol? What do you think he would have said at that point during the offseason about that Bama matchup if he had been given truth serum? It's just not going to happen.
I'm sure Manziel would have said all kinds of funny things that offseason.
Oh, of course he did on and off the record. But
Right.
That quote from Poppy was probably the 10th most noteworthy thing that he said on Bussin', even though if you're just kind of a casual fan of the sport, you'd be like, wait a minute, a Vandy quarterback really thinks his team is going to beat Bama again en route to a national title? Stop the presses. This is a new era for all of this, for this discussion, for going at a team like Bama and how that's going to be received. Castellanos is far closer to the Bama, you're next than what Pavia said. Very, very different places that they're coming from. At least that's how it was received when that quote made the rounds earlier in the week. The quarterback of the first team on Bama's schedule calling them out. I can't remember that ever happening. I don't. Maybe there's an example of it somewhere, and there's some quote that got lost in the annals of the internet. I don't know.
The closest I can give you is that USC walkout where they did the thing where they all pretended to be dogs, but that was on the day, you know?
That was the day of.
Yeah.
That's the day of, and that's kind of what you have to do to get yourself hyped up to play Bama. All right,
Mm-hmm.
like let's just call it what it is. But doing this a couple months out is pretty wild. It really is. I think there's an important distinction with what Castellanos said, even if it ends up being just a freezing cold take by the end of week one, which I believe it will be. I do believe that Bama's going to win that game against Florida State, and I don't think that Castellanos will get the last laugh. He said how Nick Saban isn't there to save them. That's an important way to phrase that, even if you think that's wild, right?
That's a diss track, bro. That's so crazy.
The fear that Bama once instilled in people was that no matter what team Saban had, he was either going to make an adjustment to beat you in the offseason, he was going to make an adjustment to beat you midweek, or he was going to make an adjustment to beat you mid-game. He was capable of doing all three of those things, and sometimes it needed to be all three of those things to win a given football game. Mm-hmm. He is, as we have always mentioned on the show, he is the best adapt or die guy that college football has ever had. Point blank. Not a second option whatsoever. It is him. I would compare Saban to Greg Maddux. He could beat you with so many different pitches and outlast you. And sometimes it was just pure dominance, and it was more of the peak Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez type of stuff that you could see and just go, nope, I've got no chance. That's going to be 3 pitches and I'm going to be out. But I would compare it to Maddux just because of the variety and because of the adaptability that Saban showed over his time in Tuscaloosa. You could
say too, really quick, like, remember, we've talked about this before, right? Where it's like 85 to 90% of teams, when they step on the field with Bama, they've already lost the game, right?
Yes.
But whenever you can punch Bama in the mouth, they're still going to adapt within the course of that game. Exactly what you said. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a interesting take. Yeah.
I think you could be on your third time through the order against Greg Maddux and still having to adjust to him because he's figured out how to work the zone. He's got Javi lined up with his inside foot on the outside corner, and the ump has given him 6 inches off the plate with that 2-seam fastball that he's still going to find a way to throw for a strike, or at least make it look like a strike. He's always in control. That was the thing about Maddux, and I know with my Instagram algorithm, I'm just going to get a million clips of peak Greg Maddux. I don't care, and I'm totally not bitter at all by the fact that the Cubs traded him instead of just giving the Cy Young candidate all the money that he deserved, whatever.
Of course.
There's just always something he could do to beat you, and that is such a deflating feeling, even if it's not coming at you with 98 on the black. Like some of those LSU relievers were throwing 101 on the black. Just cheating. Absolutely. DeBoer, at this stage of his career, is a relief pitcher with 1 to 2 pitches in his arsenal. When he's got them rolling, he can be unhittable. He can be. Like a relief pitcher that's got 2 really good go-to pitches, they could be nasty. They definitely can be. But Kalen DeBoer hasn't established a presence yet that makes you think that you're adjusting to him. Last year was a reminder that if one of his pitches isn't there, he's only got 1 pitch that he can throw for a strike, and teams will sit on that. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be the standard moving forward. That doesn't have to be the rest of his career, but it's just clearly right now at this stage, guys are comfortable standing in the box and waiting on their pitch. That's a lot of baseball references. Man, we got baseball in the brain. Just deal with it. Whether people want to admit it or not, We Want Bama personifies a certain level of respect that for our generation, Tiger in his Sunday red, MJ in a closeout game, invincibility. It does. It pays respect to that. I do think that even if DeBoer, if he wins a ton of games, I think We Want Bama will just take on new life, and it's not going to have the same sort of air about it that it had in the 2010s, because I just kind of think offensive-minded head coaches pretty rarely invoke fear in an opponent, especially when they inherit great programs like Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma or Ryan Day at Ohio State. Maybe We Want Bama would have only continued if someone like Dan Lanning would have stepped in and had that same sort of mentality. And all of a sudden, these defenses that during 2018 to 2023, during the last 6 years of the Saban era, 5 of which were with Pete Golding, they weren't peak Bama defenses. Maybe if all of a sudden they just boom flip that switch and Dan Lanning steps in, and it's, hey, Bama's going to have a top 3 scoring defense in college football every year. Set it and forget it. Doesn't matter who those guys are. Maybe it would still have a feel of We Want Bama. The irony is that Lanning's offenses at Oregon so far have kind of been the star. Yep. And through 1 year of the DeBoer era at Alabama, the defense was the significantly better unit.
Yep.
But it's perception. Perception is everything. The perception right now is that Bama can be had. We're no longer in a time in which preseason shade at Bama feels like it's inevitably going to end up horribly. I still think the Thomas Castellanos talk will inevitably end up horribly. But do I look at what Diego Pavia said and go, no, like why is he saying that? I actually kind of took more issue with what Ryan Williams said, talking about the sledgehammer in the ant.
That was also crazy. Thank you for bringing that back up, because I love Ryan Williams, man. He's so entertaining.
John Gruden quote, by the way, Ryan Williams talking about how that's a revenge game for him. I would have been a little bit more comfortable if Ryan Williams had come out and said Vandy was ants at a picnic, but instead he went in a different direction. We'll see who gets the last laugh there. But Will, in the final 15 years of the Saban era, there were 4 instances in which Bama was not picked to win the SEC. This is something that we were talking about a lot 2 years ago, right around this time. Those instances in those final 15 years of the Saban era, 2009, 2012, 2015, 2023. In all 4 of those instances, Bama won the SEC, and in 3 of them, Bama won a national title. It used to be this, why are we doing this in the media poll? If you don't pick Bama to win, that's just the most obvious, like, Bama national championship season ever. That's the preamble for it. I still expect Bama to get plenty of preseason respect. There are people like Lenore Sellers. If you saw the quote that he had with Zach Gelb, he said, Bama is still Bama. They're still really big, really strong, really fast. And he still kind of was like, look, I'm not going in that direction. I saw what Thomas Castellanos said. That's not me. I'm paying them all the respect in the world. A lot of people will still do that, and Bama's still going to carry that aura, so to speak, that all the kids like to talk about today. Do they have aura? It's not that we're about to see everyone disrespect Bama. But once upon a time, the idea of 2 sub-6-foot quarterbacks essentially calling their shot against Bama would have been unheard of. This feels like the first time in a long time in which guys feel confident enough to go on record and say something like that. Not some leaked clip that gets out there from a preseason workout or something like that. No, on the record stuff where real major media outlets are saying, yeah, like I'm willing to say I feel comfortable enough. I really like our chances. So in honor of that, Will, I thought we'd do a little exercise to close this out. I mapped out why every team on Bama's schedule should want Bama.
Okay. I'm ready for it. And really quick to put a bow on that with these QBs. I mean, I think it just is the era of parity, right? And for so much of our time at SDS, it was people chasing Alabama objectively, right? And given the format, we were together for pretty much the entire 14 playoff era. Even when they expanded from the BCS and you would potentially get another shot, we saw that in 2017. We saw that whenever Georgia was able to punch Alabama, and it was like, who's this Tua Tagovailoa? Uh-oh. And so point being, all that did was give Bama more lives. We thought that we were going to get parity when we got a 14 playoff, but it gave Bama a chance to be hunting you at the end of the season with a playoff berth on the line. Now that we've got to a 12-team playoff, that stuff is less, I guess, relevant in the regular season. And at the same time, with Nick Saban gone, and there have been teams, obviously, like you talked about last year, it felt like the wins were almost like unlikely last year, whereas like the games that Bama needed to get up for, I've talked about this a little bit, LSU, Georgia, like I feel like those games they played pretty well, Tennessee notwithstanding, right? But point being, I think that it's just a different vibe. But part of that is the parity in college football and the fact that it feels like it's not this empire that you just can't even reach up and grab. And then part of it, I think, too, is the modern athlete. I think we can't discount that, right? Where athletes just didn't used to say stuff like that because they could get benched or they could get reprimanded behind the scenes. And Ryan Williams is a great example of this. He's a guy that's been a brand since he got to college, and not in the way we talk about, oh, NIL. Like, he has been famous and building his brand and building his kind of Q rating with every comment he has made. So yeah, I think that for a guy like Pavia, like you talked about, it's different than Castellanos. It's different because he's already done it. And I think, but again, I think a guy like Castellanos can look at Pavia and how his profile got raised after beating Alabama and say, that could be me. The difference is he had to beat Alabama for that to happen before, he said the cool stuff. He put on the hat. He talked about his family. We had the great, interview kind of discussing that, right? And so point being, I think he kind of put the cart before the horse, which is just never what you do in sports. And I mean, his offensive coordinator is Gus Malzahn. Like, you would think that that's a guy
who has beat Bama, who has beat Bama 3 times.
But you know what we never got was a quote out of Gus Malzahn like that. So he's got to be shaking his head like, son, come on, Alabama.
There is definitely going to be reminders of that, especially when lose or draw for Florida State.
Yeah,
you have just done something that I think everyone in that locker room would say, why did you do that? Why? What was the good? Even if you are telling yourself that to get yourself motivated, there are different cards that you can play, publicly speaking. And now for 2 months, Bama just has all the ammo in the world. Florida State will not be sneaking up on them. They weren't probably going to sneak up on them anyways, with it being the opener. But it is just sort of a different time. And does it still carry the same sort of weight to call out Bama after they just had the year that they had? I think it's different if Bama last year goes to the college football playoff and they're 11-1. Maybe their one regular season loss was to Tennessee or something like that, and they go into the playoff and then maybe they lose in the first round of the playoff game. Are we still talking about Bama with that same sort of respect to what does it mean to call them out? Is there that strong of a reaction? There's probably a much stronger reaction. But at the same time, when you show that you're that vulnerable, a lot of people are going to start taking shots. A lot of people that have been waiting a long time for you to be in this position against the ropes. Maybe Bama's going to get off the ropes and be just fine and start throwing haymakers en route to an SEC title this year. We can't rule that out. But for right now, at this specific instance, there's never been, in the last 18 years, a more favorable time to have this type of conversation about Bama. And that's the cold hard truth. So we'll go through all the opponents here. And we're just going to say this is your reason why you should want Bama and why Bama's going to go 0-12 this year. So we're going to skip the two that have already been named because I think they're quarterbacks who I will see eye to eye with as a fellow 5'8" guy. Their quarterbacks have already given them the We Want Bama bulletin board material. Louisiana Monroe. Look, if we're talking about this being as vulnerable as Bama's been since 2007, what happened in 2007?
Tinfoil
Bama
hat
lost
time.
to Louisiana Monroe.
There we go.
Saying.
They've appeared again.
Yep. Wisconsin. The last time that Bama hosted a premier non-conference game, what happened? 2023 Texas. Just saying. At Georgia. The last time that Georgia lost a home game at night, Saban had yet to win his first title at Bama. Think about that.
I love these stats, man.
2009.
That's nuts. Yeah. And again, Georgia fans would tell you they don't get enough home night games. I get that. But when you have gotten them, you showed out.
Shout out my guy Perry for reminding me of that. I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before. But one of those things that I immediately had to look up and go, wait a minute, that's actually true. Yeah, 2009 Kentucky. That was their last home night loss at Sanford Stadium. At Mizzou, a run-heavy, one-dimensional attack, winning a home game against Bama. Oklahoma last year. That's what that was. So Mizzou can follow that blueprint. Against Tennessee, if you just look at the times that Josh Heupel has had a roster not immediately in the wake of the Jeremy Pruitt fallout. He's won 2 out of the last 3 times against Bama.
That is the
Noteworthy.
most. I love Josh Heupel, man. What a perplexing head coach. What a dude that I just can never figure out. I will never get tired of learning about him because you're absolutely right. That is, 2 of the last 3 games versus Bama.
They won Bama, probably won Bama maybe as much as any team during the 2010s, and did not get Bama in the 2010s, but have gotten him a couple of times in the Heupel era. At South Carolina, people forget South Carolina dominated that game in the second half and was the far better team compared to Alabama in the second half of last year. LSU.
Mike Shula, hold on. Mike Shula revenge game?
Oh, good point. Good point. Mike Shula revenge game. How could I gloss over that fact? Mike Shula absolutely wants Bama. Come on. What do they even do with the guy that replaced him? How did that even work out?
Come on, man.
Yeah. LSU. Jalen Milroe ain't walking through that door.
He was not walking. He was sprinting. He was like a fire hydrant on rockets.
I think he even did a little bit of a gallop skip that he does sometimes when he does. It's a little bit of like a hesitation move that he put on a few times that night. Whatever Jalen Milroe is doing to get movement going in the correct direction, that will not have to be a concern for LSU this year. Against Oklahoma. The last 2 times that Brent Venables faced Bama, his teams haven't just wanted Bama, they've dominated Bama. 68-19. Those are the combined scores. 2018 national championship at the end of that season. Yeah. You know how that went. Eastern Illinois. This is what you came here for. The school that gave us Sean Payton, Tony Romo, and Jimmy Garoppolo probably has some no-name quarterback that's about to make a name for himself with what he's going to do against Bama. That's going to happen.
I love an Eastern Illinois shout out. I was about to say, because I'm a Saints fan, have that like kind of in the background of my head. Because Sean Payton, Tony Romo, Jimmy G. Yep, shout out.
Decent amount of people from my high school went to Eastern Illinois. Decent amount.
Do we have the mascot there?
Panthers.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I had a conversation with someone at the wedding we were at a couple of months ago, and he's like, "Yeah, I went to Vermont. You probably don't know anything about Vermont." I'm like, "Go Catamounts, man. What are you talking about?"
There you go.
At Auburn. Jackson Arnold has never lost to Bama. And not only has he never lost to Bama, he's won each of his games, by 3 touchdowns. So, Bama 0-12. Everyone should want Bama. It shouldn't just be limited to Diego Pavia and Thomas Castellanos calling out Bama. Everyone, go call your shot. I just gave you all the evidence that you need for why your specific team is going to beat Bama this year. And this will be a winless fall in Tuscaloosa.
Look, man, after that, I feel like they're about to hire you as SID at Bama. You might dig through, find a couple more natties. Like, I feel it.
Sure.
I feel inspired right now. Now, again, like you said, big teams don't actually want Bama. I kind of made that mistake last year. You remember I changed my opinion, my take. I got cold feet the day of. But, yeah, I would like to not think about the Bama game. So, good for FSU for really putting all the focus on them.
It's going to be interesting to see how DeBoer handles those conversations. Is he the type of guy that's going to give us a little bit something in a post-game press conference, a little wry smile? Not saying like he has to do it in the way that Saban did, because obviously actions speak louder than words. If your team comes out and wins a game 59-0, a la 2017 Vandy hosting Bama, then we'll know what was said and what didn't have to be said. But you've got people that are feeling comfortable enough to take shots at you and feel like on any given day, your team could be susceptible to a loss. Does he make that a thing of the past this year? That's what you ultimately have to do. And even there's progress in a 10-2 season in which you get to the college football playoff and your only 2 losses are to teams that are also going to the college football playoff. There is progress in that from a perception standpoint, even if that isn't the end goal and what ultimately Kalen DeBoer was brought to Alabama to do. But it can't be a repeat of last year if we want Bama is going to have any life beyond 2025.
I'm glad you brought that up too about the DeBoer side of it. I was just thinking this, and it shames me to even think about this. I mean, it doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. But if DeBoer were a different type of person, like if he were just a little bit more relatable, if he kind of had a little bit of that, like the everyman type of vibe to him, I think he's a little bit too reserved for me to just like him as a coach and a guy that I could root for. I would really kind of start to root for Bama here just a little bit and go, come on now. Like, this is not, we're not talking about Troy here. This is a real program with real athletes. The recruiting has been great, like we talked about. I feel like that feels almost unfair that we got to face these questions after 1 year. We've talked about how, many coaches have struggled in their first season. And I think this is a tremendous bulletin board too. I'm really big on Bama this year, unfortunately. And so the one thing about me is I'll always be honest, right? And I do like what Bama is building. And I almost feel for the guy to a degree because in one season, we've gone from everyone walking on eggshells and scared to ask questions to everyone feeling like they have a shot. And I'm like, man, this could be a real, like, how do you like me now type of season for DeBoer, especially with Ryan Grubb.
Will people fear the type of offense that they have this season? And will people ever fear a team that, much like we'll talk about with Pat Dooley in a second here, is going to beat you by lighting up the scoreboard? A Spurrier coach team, how much fear did you have playing against them? Or is this just simply about being upset proof? Is this just simply about, hey, you're not going to lay that sort of egg? And not only is Bama going to get through those games, but they're going to embarrass those teams and show just how they're 6-7 tax brackets above whatever sort of team they're sharing the field with on a given day. That's a tough thing to establish. And I don't know that Saban truly established that until 2011. Because you could poke holes in some of those early years, obviously, and especially with what happened in 2010. But different situations that each of those coaches inherited, so they're being held to a different standard. DeBoer's being asked to maintain something, and Saban was asked to build something. So obviously it's different there. But it is tough to get to that place where you truly have an identity. I don't know what the identity is going to be, if it is going to be an identity of invincibility in Tuscaloosa. But in this very moment, guys are at least comfortable coming out and saying things on the record that I just don't think you would say, as Castellanos himself admitted, you don't say when Nick Saban is that head coach.
I'll say too real quick, because I do want to push back on that. I know there's something to getting stopped by a great defense, but I would argue that 2020 was one of the scarier Bama teams, if not the scariest Bama team, because it could beat you so many ways on offense. Oh my gosh, I'm getting credit to the Bama COVID champ. Who am I today? I'm having such a good day, I guess. But I mean, that was a team that, they could beat you in 10 different ways. And you could see those receivers that were so fast. You could see Najee Harris being so physical. You could see, Mac Jones was on one that year. And it felt like every snap was a chance for them to just fry you. So I do think a certain type of offensive team, like for instance, the Derrick Henry team in 2015, he was very scary. Don't get me wrong. The task of stopping Derrick Henry was very hard. But mentally, it's like, okay, we could just stop this player. Whereas 2020 was more like, I don't know what to do against this team. Obviously, many teams does not know what to do against that team.
I would push back on the 2015, just as we've talked about before. People forget the Jake Coker postseason run that he went on
in the playoffs.
As well.
He balled out
his
mind. He balled, and that was a defensive team. That was a scary defensive team. But I'm saying, like, which type of team would I like? Like, which type of team would I rather play? Sometimes that defensive team that I know struggles a little bit on offense because a play here, a play there, and you're in that game. A team like 2020 Bama, it's like, bro, if you make 2 mistakes, you're down 14 and you're done.
Last question for you related to this topic. If Diego Pavia beats Bama again, whatever. Let me dial it back. Never mind. I don't like the way that I was starting to phrase that question. Diego Pavia beating Bama again would be a tougher pill to swallow for Kalen DeBoer than any pill that Nick Saban ever had to swallow at Alabama. True or false?
Yeah, I think so.
Because year one stuff, you could just, Louisiana Monroe, it's year one. Throw it out.
Obviously, that meant something, right? Yeah.
I think it would be. Now, Hugh Freeze losing 4 times to Diego Pavia, because people forget He lost him. New Mexico State and Liberty when those two teams played as well, and then
Yep.
New Mexico State and Auburn, and then last year as well. Losing 4 times, that would be not at the top of Hugh Freeze's resume, but it would confirm that Diego Pavia, as running the state of Alabama, like he just gets the key to the entire state. I think that would happen. He thinks that Vandy is going to be the class of Tennessee, that Vandy is going to run the state of Tennessee, not the Tennessee team that he lost to, that went to the playoff last year. Diego said a lot of noteworthy things. It's crazy that we're talking about the 10th most noteworthy thing that came out of that.
Oh, I love a trash talker that backs it up, right? Like, I hate bulletin board material, but I love a walkie-talkie guy, and I think Diego Pavia is just that, man. I think he believes that in his heart of hearts. You know, that's his brand all the way. So, yeah, I think it would be embarrassing. The thing that's crazy is, now that I'm looking back at the Saban tenure, there wasn't really that much embarrassment. There were losses. Like, the kick six was ridiculous, but it wasn't like embarrassing. It's losing to your rival. Like, that's a good team that like played for a national title. You know, like outside of year one, yeah, there wasn't really like is Nick Saban washed? It was like more of guys are catching up to him, but there was not like an actual fear of doubt that like he had lost it. You know,
2 losses during the entire 2010s decade to teams that were outside of the AP top 15. Do you know those 2 games?
Give me the decade again.
During the 2010s decade. I'll give you here's your hint. They were both teams that were ranked. Okay. Alabama was on the road in both games, and the 2 losses that I'm speaking of bookended the decade with the years that they happened in.
Does Garcia count 2010? Is he part of this?
Correct. That is part of the 2010 is indeed part of the 2010s, Will.
Listen, you never know, right?
No, you do.
Sometimes you do. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're going 2010 to 09. I got you. So it was, the other one can't be, I would guess Auburn or LSU.
2019, Auburn. Auburn was 16th in the country. That is a loss outside of the top 15. An Iron Bowl game in which obviously Tua was out, Mac Jones did the 2 pick sixes, but during the entire 2010s decade, those are the only Bama losses to teams outside of the top 15, which is just bananas to process. But yeah, different times after the year that was, and we'll see if Bama can get over that this year. All right, let's kick it to Pat Dooley. He is a household name for so many Florida fans. As someone that has been covering the Gators for nearly 4 decades. So we talked a bunch of different Lagway things, Spurrier, and a lot more with him. So here is Pat Dooley. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest, a first-time guest. It is Pat Dooley. Pat, this is a home and home of sorts between us after I went on your show, another duly noted podcast, and we discussed a ton of different Florida topics. So a little podcasting trick was that you basically just gave me all the good ideas for questions to ask you. So thank you for doing that.
That's what I'm here for.
Let's start with the question that I think will define Florida's season. It's perhaps maybe the biggest agent of chaos, not just in the SEC, but really in the entire college football season. If you want to break down what it means for Billy Napier, the coaching carousel, all those different things. How healthy will DJ Lagway's shoulder be once fall camp starts in about 5 weeks?
I don't think it'll be a problem at all. In fact, but you never know. He gets hit in it, in a game. I mean, don't forget they lost Graham Mertz for the year when he was diving for a first down against Missouri, and he got hit in the shoulder. He's done, and it cost them that year. You never know, and especially once you've had a shoulder injury. It's not just his shoulder, though. He's had lower body is what they're calling it, but we all know that there's been something going on with his groin. But that was the whole point of shutting him down in the spring, was to say, DJ, we got a program here, and you're going to be ready to go in June, and you're going to be able to do everything you need to do in June, and that's going to set us up, but it's going to mean you miss throwing in spring. That's the plan they took. Hopefully it works. It appears to be working right now, but, it's the same old thing we saw with Anthony Richardson, an unbelievable athlete, but he couldn't stay healthy. He was always getting hurt. And because they're physically impressive players who tried to get maybe a little more out of things. So that's going to be the question. Because I think Lagway is an underrated runner, to be honest with you, if he wants to go. But then I'm like, well, don't run unless you can slide.
And the tricky thing is, last year we saw what he was able to do with the hamstring apparatus, and he still, within those limitations, was highly effective and made some big time throws that felt like confirmation bias for all the hype that he came with, going into Florida. Everything that we saw last year suggested this guy can be all of those things and then some. But I do find myself asking this: have we overhyped Lagway? Or is saying that he has legitimate Heisman upside a fair thing at this point of his career?
I think both those things are true, to be honest with you, because I do think I think Lagway has gotten a lot of hype for one reason, and that's because he's been committed to Florida since his senior year of high school and been getting NIL money from Florida since his senior year of high school. And when he came in, everybody was excited. They were ready to bump Mertz out. But, of course, we all knew that wasn't going to happen because Mertz knew the offense and was an effective quarterback. And Graham Mertz had a great, he couldn't throw the ball as far, but he was a good quarterback. But, Lagway's got different skill set, and it's certainly a skill set that I know a lot of NFL guys are looking at. But at the same time, they don't want another Anthony Richardson. They don't want somebody who comes in and gets hurt all the time. So that's going to be the thing. And I think that is where his camp is really worried about word getting out about injuries and stuff because they don't want it to hurt his pro career. But on the other hand, if Lagway plays like he played against LSU and Ole Miss to end the season last year, could he be in the Heisman mix? Absolutely. Spurrier made some waves on my podcast on Monday because he said Arch Manning's already got the Heisman. Why didn't he start last year? Why did they start Quinn Ewers all those games? Of course, the Texas people are freaking out. But my thing is with Lagway is I think he's a smart enough, good enough kid to be able to put all that stuff behind him. It's just if he can stay healthy. And you know this. I mean, if Harrison Bailey's their quarterback, everything's out the window. You're talking about a non-starter, 6-year player who was not a non-starter. I mean, he started a couple of games, but not many. So they got to keep him healthy. There's no doubt about it.
It's Florida's best offseason vibe since probably post 2018, even with the Lagway, weirdness with the injury and all that stuff. You could say, the program was in better shape after 2019, but everything that happened after that after the 2019 season with COVID, with the Mullen contract, there was just a lot of stuff behind the scenes with Florida that was, pretty unsettling and just kind of weird. If a vibe-killing 3-3 start awaits this team, which I think you look at the schedule and go, that's really not crazy. They could be underdogs in maybe 3 of those games, or perhaps even 4 of those games in the first half of the schedule. If that happens, what will be the culprit?
Well, it'll be because they have a track record for not getting off to fast starts, and that is a concern. The Miami game last year was an embarrassment. And my thing is, their whole thing was that they turned the season around during the open week when they had full practices and competed and everything. I'm like, well, why didn't you do that in the fall? That's what you're supposed to be doing in the fall. But I think in the fall, it's all about install and timing and everything. But look, they play in a row, although there's a bye week in there. They got to play at LSU, who has a potential Heisman Trophy first-round pick. I'm not saying he's going to be, but Nessmeyer could be. Then you play a $4 million quarterback at Miami, and then you play the probable Heisman winner, an Arch Manning, again at home against Texas. That's a 3-game run that is brutal. If you can get through that somehow 2-1, you're off. If you go through it 1-2. People are going to wonder, and they're going to get the hot seat talk will get you go 0-3, which is very possible. Now the hot seat. Now I'm getting the calls from McElroy like I got last year saying, "Who's the next coach going to be?" And I go, "They still got a coach," but everybody was calling me saying, "All right, we know Napier's gone. What do you think they'll do next? Who do you think they'll bring in next?" I'm like, I'm going to wait, and let him finish this out. Just me.
What was the most what was, besides McElroy, what was the most noteworthy call that you had? Because it's like you're obviously very, very connected, and there's a certain level of expectation that if Scott Strickland isn't going to be available to answer that question, then you certainly are. What was somebody that called you up and was like, "Hey, what does it look like?" Because I'm sure there were plenty of Florida alums that were in your DMs or just blowing you up for that information.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of those guys, and a lot of times it would be I would get somebody to come on my podcast, might be a sports writer, might be a former Gator player, somebody like that, and the entire pre-interview questions would be about, is he gone? You think he's going to get gone? He's going to get fired? What do you hear? And I go, I think he's going to be okay, but let him finish it out and see where it goes. And of course, he finished it out and it went good, but I got to say this: 8-5. If we're celebrating that in Gainesville, that's not good. I mean, that is where this is the biggest year in Billy Napier's career. It really is. He has got his best roster together. This is the roster he put together over a 4-year period through the portal, through recruiting. They've spent a fortune on it. We all know that. They've got 600 guys wearing polo shirts. They've got, this is a year you've got to move it from the Heavener facility, the big facility they built, which is great. You've got to move it from there over to the stadium, and you've got to make it work in the stadium. And it hasn't worked all the time in the stadium. And certainly the beginning of last year, when they get throttled by Miami and Texas A&M, that was a bad look for Billy Napier. You can't have that. And that 3-game run, you can't have that 3-game run be bad. That's the bottom line.
Speaking of off-season vibes, you're being interviewed for a new film on just maybe the weirdest vibes possible that kicked off the start of the Spurrier era. And if you're from my generation, this is a story that I don't know that a lot of people fully remember unless you experienced it. And it had nothing to do with on-field issues. It had everything to do with a horrifying on-campus tragedy in Gainesville in 1990. Tell people about this because, like I said, unless you lived it like you did when you were there, you probably don't remember it.
Yeah, it's a very weird time in my life because I had become sports editor in '87, late '87. Emmett's second game, I think, was when I came in. And then we went through the whole Galen, Norm Sloan, NCAA's in town. We had a spotlight team, that was concentrating on it. And then these murders happened, and the spotlight team was in the middle of it, and they were all good friends of mine. So I was hearing all the stories when they would come back from talking to the cops privately. And I was freaked out. I got to be. I stayed up all night one night with a bat in my hands like this, and because I had a daughter and my wife at home, and so it was a weird time here. And also during that time, this is the weird part. We had suspended Jack Harston for something that had to do with he had an age discrimination suit going against us from writing columns. So I had to write the column that day. And I told all our guys, be careful what you write today. Don't forget, we're covering a football game. And let's not get into too much of, she would have been
5 murders, 5 people killed in a 4-day stretch in Gainesville in August, like leading up to the start of the season. They still decide to play this football game on a Saturday, which I don't know that game gets played in 2025 with what was going on and how horrific that was for the Florida community.
Well, not only that, Connor, the guy was still out there. I mean, it wasn't like they had caught anybody. They caught a guy that turned out was totally innocent. He was just a nut. And so that was the thing. And there was an uneasiness about the whole day. How much are we supposed to have fun? Are we supposed to sit here and tailgate like we always do? You get into the stadium and you're like, I don't know how excited I'm allowed to be. But then, of course, the Florida offense just goes up and down the field. It's a new thing. And everybody kind of came out of there going, I think I'm happy again, but we still had a killer on the loose in Gainesville. So it was just an odd, weird time. And I actually am glad that they're doing this 30 for 30 on it. And because it is an interesting story about a weird time. And, Coach Spurrier said to all the players, go, you can go with your girlfriends and stay at their place. And if you feel like you need to protect them and stuff like that, that's where we were. And these guys are supposed to keep their mind on the first game they're playing for Steve Spurrier. But obviously Oklahoma State wasn't very good that year.
I went back yesterday and watched a bunch of old clips about this story. And I think what, can be lost in it is obviously the nature, the very graphic nature of the crimes that were committed. You would think, all right, this is, a guy that's targeting petite females, a monster targeting petite females. And then you hear, well, he stabbed this guy who basically looked like a football player as well and killed him en route to another one of his victims. And I just wonder the psyche of what that was like for a football team who, yes, you have this air of invincibility at the time, and you're thinking nothing can hurt us. We're good. We'll handle ourselves against a potential predator. That's what we're born to do. But what has Spurrier told you about how he handled that and how he handled that uneasiness that set in at basically the worst possible time, like late August, just as everybody's ramping up and singularly focused, or at least supposed to be singular focused on this very new era of Florida football?
Yeah, I mean, for him, he was like everybody. He was worried about the women that were out there, and that's why he was telling his players, "Go ahead and stay. You don't have to stay." This is back when they had dorms, Jan Hall. You don't have to stay there. You can go stay with your girlfriends. But there was this kind of level of, are we even going to have this game played, like you said? And the funny thing is, I was trying to remember how much discussion there was whether the game would be played, and it felt like it was pretty dismissed pretty quickly about not playing the game, that they were going to play it and there would be a chance to everybody to get together. And but also, look, it's financial is an issue there too. There's no question about it, and people had made plans, and the place was packed for that game. So, but once game day started for Steve, it was game day, and he was able to. He's pretty good about compartmentalizing things, so he was able. And I talked to him about this. He goes, once the game started, we were trying not to think about those kind of things and just going forward. The trouble is when the game ended and you kind of walked away from there, you're going, that guy could have been in the stands. I don't even know if he might have been. I don't know if he could afford to go to the game, but he might have been there. He might be at one of the tailgates. Who knows who was doing this? So that was the weird part about that.
Robbed a bank. Maybe he had funds there, but then there was the red die cap that went off that one of the bank tellers very smartly put in this bag, and they were able to use that as a way to later identify this serial killer that was on the loose. Changing gears a little bit here, because I think the Spurrier era, which you've covered in so many different ways, over the course of your time in Gainesville, but I always wonder if there was a moment that you witnessed, or maybe that Spurrier told you about, where he realized, this is going to work. Was it just simply that first season of navigating all those challenges and having a team that went in, even though, they're facing NCAA violations and all that, you can't play in a bowl game, but they go into that last game against Florida State just with one loss, with all the different things that were in their way. Was that the moment, or was there another moment when Spurrier realized things are going to work out just fine at his alma mater?
Well, he'll tell you, and he's told me a million times, that Alabama game early in the season, Florida goes to Alabama. They're not supposed to win that game. Nobody thinks they're going to win that game, and they win with defense. And Spurrier knew he had a great defense. They had a scrimmage right before the season, and everybody all the media boys that were out there, and Jack was one of them, were saying, I don't think this offense is going to work, Steve. And he's like, you don't realize we have a great defense. It's not working against this defense, and nobody else is going to be able to work their offense against this defense. And so they go to Alabama, and they win that game. I think it was 17-13. And the locker room just exploded. The coaches all now believe. The players all now believe. Because Florida's not supposed to go into Alabama and win a game, and they'd done it. And they were freaking out. And from that gave them the confidence, even with this probation, which was not fair. I mean, they shouldn't have gotten penalized for Galen Hall giving somebody some money. But once that happened, they believed. Now, they had that bump in the road in Knoxville. They went up there, and they were down 7-3 at the half, and Dale Carter runs opening kickoff back all the way, and they end up winning 45-3. But, I mean, that was the only real blip in that season, because it was pretty special to see that offense go. And then the next year, when you start recruiting even better players, and you get better offensive guys in there, and it just took off from there.
What's your favorite Spurrier story ever? Or maybe one that doesn't get told enough, because Lord knows there are so many that are out there. I've joked that I'd like to just do a book of Spurrier stories and just shorts from 50 to 75 people who could tell these stories. I'm sure you could probably put that book together right now. I mean, literally just put it on shelves and just copy and paste some of the old files. But what's one that always comes to mind when people ask you that question?
Well, there's two. So if you can give me two, I'll get. I love these two stories. One is, and we tell this story a lot. He is. There's a new guy from the Alligator. He's coming to cover the team for the first time. He loved the Gators. He cared about them. Big guy, and so he waits for Steve to come up the hill after doing all his interviews. He goes, "Hey, Coach, my name's Matt. I am going to be covering the team this year for the Alligator." And he goes, "All right, Matt." And he goes, "By the way, Coach, in high school or in college, you dated my mom for a while." And he looks him up and down and goes, "Your mom? No way." That was a good one. Then the one I played golf.
Wait, was he right though? Did he actually date his mom?
I don't know. We never found that out. We need to find it, and we need to find out what she looked like in college too.
True.
He just assumed that she had to be a big girl, I think, because this guy was big. But the other one is when I played golf with him up in Washington. He had gotten a job. They sent me up there, and in typical Spurrier fashion, because has treated me so unbelievable in my life, he organized a little golf tournament for me. And I was about to go have prostate surgery, so he knew what was going on and everything. So we're playing. I'm playing pretty good. We get to the last hole, and I crush a drive right down the middle. He goes, "You got to go for it now, Pat." I said, "All right, Coach." We'll get up there. We get up to the hole, and I go, "Where's the green?" I don't see the green. He goes, "Oh, it's just right around the corner, right behind those trees. You see a little draw. You'll be putting for an eagle. It's par 5. I go, "Okay, cool." So I hit it. I go, "Is that on, Coach?" I don't see it. And he goes, "No, it's in the water." I said, "Water? You didn't tell me there was water up there." He goes, "I'm going to lay up, I think." So he lays up, makes a birdie. I make a bogey. I have to give him the $20. I'm like, he is what he is. He's the best. I will say this. I am so glad. If you had told a 14-year-old boy or 12-year-old boy that one day I was going to be doing a podcast with Steve Spurrier every day, every Monday, I would have said, well, I did something good in my life, because having him on is such a pleasure. It is. You just give him topics and he goes, and it's hilarious.
I'm always curious about the sliding doors in college football, and Lord knows there are plenty of those with Spurrier. I do find myself wondering if there was anything that could have kept him at Florida after 2001. They lose the rescheduled Tennessee game because of 9/11. And, I do wonder, like, if they had won that game against Tennessee and maybe played for a national championship, would that have kept him there? Or was it just time and it didn't really matter the result of one game? Like, was there anything that maybe could have kept him in Gainesville and not made 2001 his last season?
Hindsight is about the only thing that would, because he wanted to go to the NFL. He wanted to give it a try. He had done it in college. He'd won a national title. He had been approached by the Saints, the Bucks. I'm trying to think of all the teams there were all these different teams that approached him, and he almost took a couple of those jobs, but he turned them down. The Bucks was the one. He was ready to take it, but then he thought about it when he got up in the morning. He decided not to. But the bottom line was he wanted to go to the NFL. In hindsight, when he's told me this before, he should have just stayed where he was. He loved it here and everything, and wanted to get back into college, and wanted the Florida job, 3 years later when they were looking for a new coach and Florida didn't want him. So he didn't appreciate that. I can tell you that. But no, I don't think there was anything that anybody could have done to keep him here. He really wanted to go. If they had won that game, he might have gone out with another national championship and gone, now I'm sailing into the sunset. But more than anything, the president at the time, John Lombardi, had said to him, 10 years is enough anywhere for anybody. And they were just having a conversation. And I think once Spurrier got to that 11 years, he started thinking, all right, it's time for me to go and try it, see what I can do in the NFL. Now, again, he picked the wrong team, the wrong owner. It did not work out.
Are the 2000s better, worse, or the same for Florida if Spurrier had stayed there, not gone to the NFL, not done the South Carolina thing? The Zook era never happens. The Urban era never happens. If he had just said, my entire coaching career, through 2000, I guess into 2015, if you want to say, if he had just spent that time in Florida, what does the 2000s look like for the Gators?
Well, the thing is, I can't see it being better because of the 2 championships. And I don't think, Urban was a relentless recruiter, and I don't think all those players, the key was Tebow. And let me tell you what, Steve. Steve's not going to go to Tim Tebow and recruit him the way Urban Meyer did. Steve's going to go, well, you can go to Alabama. We'll beat you there. But who knows? Tebow still might have come here. Tebow loved the Gators, loved Danny Werfel's family met there, but he was close to going to Alabama. Anyway, to win it in 06 and 08, get a Heisman in 07, have an undefeated season in 09 until you got to the SEC title game. It's hard for me to see it that it would have been better, but it would have been interesting. That's for sure. And that would be the other thing is, would Steve have left coaching a little bit earlier? Because let's say he stays at Florida and coaches until 2010 or something like that. He might have gotten to a point where he goes, I'm ready to sit out. And he didn't want to be a CEO. He did not want to be a Bobby Bowden kind of guy who, you got ready for the game and then they turned his sound off in his headphones so you didn't have to hear anything. So he didn't want to be that guy. And he told me that 100 times. I want to be calling plays. If I'm not calling plays, there's no point in me being a coach.
It's crazy, though, to think even in 2019, I remember being at his debut in the AAF when he's here coaching the Orlando Apollos, and he's still dialing up these looks. And I remember going to that post-game press conference thinking, like, man, that guy could be 6 feet under, and I would still bank on him to be able to dial up offensive looks that put up 35 points. And it's some guys just always have it. And I do think he would have adapted to modern offenses. I think he's shown an ability to do that, even though he clearly got burnt out by the time that he quit midseason at South Carolina. But, I do wonder, could he have worked with Tebow? Could he have really worked with those styles? Because Urban is just so perfect for what Tebow was as a quarterback. Could we have seen Tebow in the fun and gun actually put up those types of numbers?
It's an interesting question. And here's the thing. When he eventually at South Carolina went to that kind of offense, remember Connor Shaw, they would run a lot of option stuff and run him as a running quarterback and had a lot of success, won 11 games with him. So, I think he could have adapted to that. If Tebow had come here, he would have adjusted things. But, he's such a stickler for throwing motions and stuff like that. And Tebow had that wind up. Well, I need to do it left-handed. Wind up like he'd throw a baseball all the time, and that's why he had trouble in the pros. I think Tebow would have gotten benched by Spurrier. I'll say that. And that would have been a story right there, But it would have been interesting to see how that worked out. But, Spurrier has taught me one thing about football, and that is that there's a play that will work against every defense. Now, you got to figure out what the defense is, and once you figure that out, you've got to play for it. And as long as they execute it, it'll work. And he's right. I watch football now, and I go, if they play zone here and you do this, it's going to hit big. And sure enough, it does. So he has taught me more about football than anybody else in the world.
You've spent so much time dissecting Florida coaching searches during the post-Spurrier era. And, it's interesting because obviously Urban left on his own accord, however you want to break all that down. But everybody's going to continue to give Florida crap as being the school that post-Urban has not had a coach last longer than 4 years. And everybody's going to be talking about that year 4 of the Napier era. What I always want to know is, okay, then tell me which coach should have lasted more than 4 years. Tell me which one of these coaches Florida should regret firing. Like, who did they cut? Who did they cut the cord on too soon? Because it wasn't Muschamp. It definitely wasn't McElwain. It wasn't Ron Zook. I mean, I know that's, I guess, pre-Urban, that we're talking about there. And even Mullen, I think that had just kind of run its course at the time, too. As crazy as that might be to say, he had clearly fallen out of favor. And everything that I heard from behind the scenes was that his time was just done, and he knew it was done. What does it look like this year if it doesn't work out that way for Napier? And is this, again, going to be the thing that comes back and people are like, Florida, you know what? They're just too quick to fire coaches. Because if Napier goes 5-7, like, dude will be gone, and that's just the reality.
I agree. But the answer to your first question is 0.0. I love Will Muschamp, still talk to him all the time. I thought he was one of the greatest coaches in terms of being a person that's ever been in here. Unfortunately, he didn't get offense, and that was the problem for him. But he needed to go. I wrote it that day that they lost to South Carolina after blowing a big lead, and they got a punt blocked and missed a kick. It was just embarrassing. And I'm like, it's time. It's time. Sorry, I love this guy. So McElwain didn't like to be at the University of Florida. He hated everything.
Very true.
Yeah. He just hated everything. He hated those meetings they used to have with all the head coaches. He was like, God, he's making fun of them and all. So he had to go. I mean, even with all that success, he just didn't fit into the culture. McElwain, Mullen, it was all about recruiting. And there were stories that got back to the AD about, the famous story is where Mullen texts a recruit, and Georges comes in and says, hey, why don't you call Coach Mullen and say you want to talk to him? Because they knew there was a secretary doing all the texting. So they call, they don't answer the phone, and that became a big deal. And that Georgia let that story go out that had happened. So, and look, that's all's fair in recruiting, right? Especially now. So yeah, he had to go too. And I mean, but you're right. If they go 5-7, which is very possible, I don't think it'll happen, but it could happen. I don't know. Florida fans are going to say, hey, look, we have given you all these sellouts in a row for teams that have been losing records, and we keep showing up. We're not showing up anymore unless you get the right coach in here, because you clearly haven't done a good job. The problem is going to be this guy has built this incredible structure, and it is an incredible structure that they have in terms of what they do with the players, what they do, in terms of nutrition, all those things. It is set up beautifully for the next coach to walk into. So if they got the right guy, it could be really special again here, because it's set up for it. But I mean, look, the bottom line is he's got his best roster. He's got the players he recruited. It's a put up or shut up for Billy Napier. There's no doubt about it.
And can't get shut out. Can't be the one to end that streak, which
no.
goes all the way back to the 80s.
I think it's 4-23 now, 423 games in a row with scoring. Now he's the closest that ever came to it, because remember he kicked that field goal in the Las Vegas Bowl at the end of the game, so they could get 3 points on the board. But
and I remember being there for the 2021 cocktail party when there was the rumblings. Oh my God, is Mullen going to be on the wrong end of this? And would they just fire him on the spot after that game if that happened? Like, that was sort of the thing. And then obviously, they finished the game much better and avoided that. But last one for you, and it's one that, look, we have to ask every single time until we see this type of true breakthrough year, which maybe last year was, and it'll prove to be, or maybe it was a one-off. Time will tell. If there's a change at Florida, who do you ultimately think would be that next coach?
Well, a lot will depend on what goes on during this season. There's a lot of guys that are going to be hot candidates, but my problem is I'm not sure that there is a coach out there who fits the culture at Florida and that Florida can afford and that wants to leave where they are. Now, this goes to NIL and stuff like that. There's a reason LSU won another national championship in baseball. I mean, that is the ultimate place you want to coach. So you're not getting anybody out of LSU. You're not getting anybody out of USC or anything like that. So I don't know who it would be. I really don't. I haven't thought about it a whole lot. I did a lot last year, but there were candidates that I thought were, I was putting guys like Jamie Chadwell in that mix and stuff, and people were telling me I was an idiot. So, but I think that what they'll do is swing for the fences and end up probably hitting a double, because that's what tends to happen. They swung for the fences with Chip Kelly, and they wanted him badly. And Chip Kelly said he didn't want to be the governor of Florida, which I still don't know what that means, but that's why he turned him down. So, but yeah, next time I talk to you, I'll have a name for you. I really haven't thought it through in terms of, when you see things like Belichick getting hired and Kelly leaving Notre Dame and how crazy that it's been the last 4 or 5 years, I think all the things that are going on with college football are going to kind of dictate what kind of guy you can get. Is it going to allow you to have the kind of money that you could go spend a lot of money on a guy, which you're going to have to do to get a really good coach?
Very true. Yes, we'll definitely have to revisit this subject, especially if it warrants it. Or who knows, maybe we'll be talking about a Billy Napier extension or something like that.
Is he the coach of the year?
Is he the coach of the year in the SEC?
Yeah.
Is DJ Lagway in Heisman contention? Yeah. Who knows?
You never know where it's going to go, and that's the great thing. As I always like to say, it's unscripted. We know what we think's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen with anything.
It's the beauty. It's what keeps people coming back for more.
Exactly.
Pat, you're the man. Glad we got to do this. Florida fans, everybody, if you don't already, please go listen, subscribe to another Dooley Noted podcast. You'll hear Spurrier on a very regular basis every Monday. A lot of great other guests, not to toot my own horn or anything. I may have been one of those at some point.
Yeah, you were one of the best.
Weeks.
People reacted very strong. We got Ernest Graham this week, and and I think Christy Dosh. She's coming on next week too, so she'll be great.
Friend of this show, Christy is. Yes, we'll be able to do this again. Another home and home will happen in the very near future for both of us.
I got you, buddy.
Matt, we'll do it again soon. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. If I had to guess, I would just throw out the likely pick of something LSU baseball related to your lad of the week.
Man, it was a big week for lads, wasn't it? I mean, we had NBA go down to 7 games. And like you talked about, Halliburton got hurt. That could have been kind of a better game. But I think that that was an incredible kind of championship run to be able to watch LSU baseball and then be able to watch a Game 7. And there were so many contributors for this LSU team. Kate Anderson did amazing. But my lad of the week this week is Jay Johnson. I think this second title that he has won in 3 seasons, like I said, really cemented LSU as the class of college baseball going forward. They're second overall in titles, but USC won a bunch of titles back in the day when it was just a completely different sport. And so in the modern era, this is the beginning of a dynasty. And everybody defines dynasty a little bit different, but there are 2 players that actually played in both championship teams, right? It's Pearson and Bear Jones, and Bear Jones was a little bit younger. Pearson was a starter, didn't start in the final against Coastal, so really almost zero overlap in terms of impact players. Talk about Guidry and Chase Shores were on both rosters, but one was hurt for one was hurt for the other. Those were the only 2 gentlemen who actually checked in and contributed to both titles. To me, that is a fast track to a dynasty. I don't think LSU is there right now, but in the transfer portal, it is not the same sport where you can just develop your guys. You got to go get aggressive, and Jay Johnson did that this season. One thing that's really cool is the last 3 complete game shutouts that have been thrown in the College World Series final, the championship series. One was Oregon State 2018, which is Yeski was the pitching coach, the one that's currently at LSU. And one was 2016 Arizona with Jay Johnson. In 2016, Coastal Carolina ran through the Baton Rouge Super Regional. I remember it. They swept LSU. And that was kind of, the LSU lost to Florida in the championship the next year, but it was a real wake-up call that LSU baseball kind of wasn't where it needed to be. For Jay Johnson to see that same team again, for Kate Anderson to throw a complete game shutout again, to face this team that came into the week talking the worst trash I've ever seen. I mean, to watch the way this team was up and down throughout the year, LSU fans were calling for Jay Johnson's job in the middle of this year because they had some weird blowout losses. That's just how college baseball is. I know a lot of people are new college baseball fans. They want to treat it like football, but sometimes it's just a bunch of kids running around a field, and sometimes you lose to bad teams. That's just what it is. But it's just, I hate to say it that way. Baseball is a weird sport, but I say all that to say the way they were able to just exercise all those demons in a row. When I saw Coastal Carolina and that amazing win streak they had coming in, when I saw them, speak at the microphone and basically act like they had already won the championship, I honestly got a little scared. I'm going to be honest, because it felt like they were a team of destiny. But what Cade Anderson did, putting the team on his back, Jay Johnson trusting him to leave him in there, and then, like I said, to have that weird thing where you've already played this team, you've already had a complete game shutout from your ace. And last time it didn't go your way, right? Like they won the last 2 games, obviously, back to back after that great performance. I went and I read an article about this kind of in prep, and the article was phrased as if it was already over. Like Arizona had already won the title. Jay Johnson had done it. And so I think that
Arizona had already won the title.
Yeah, like after the complete game shutout, the article was like, all they have to do is win 1 of 2. They dominated Coastal. This is like just they're setting the stage because they had just won in 2012 as well.
So you're saying the 2016? Yeah.
2016.
Gotcha.
They were behaving as if Arizona had already won the title after the complete game shutout. So Jay Johnson comes in, sees this really scrappy team, and I want to respect a team like that. It gets on base, gets hit by pitches, stuff like that. But like I said, the way they just kind of behave made me not feel sorry at all that their coach got tossed. Do I agree with it? I don't care. That's the best part. When you act that way, it doesn't matter. I don't have to feel sorry for you. You're asking me to feel sorry for you is what you're asking me to do. And when you act that way and you sit there in front of the microphone talking about, we got to win the big inning war. We got to go 1-0. We got to do all right, man. And so point being, I say all that to say, it has been an absolute joy and a pleasure. I said this at the top, to watch these teams. They've been full of such fun guys, such fun characters, international, West Coast, Baton Rouge, Rose Pine, Louisiana, all across the country, all across the world. So I'm so happy to be able to watch this team and what Jay Johnson has built. And people doubted him every step of the way because he's a little bit different. He plays a little bit different lineups. But this is a defensive team that was really scrappy. And like I said, that's how you know your organization is great. Whenever you can win with a scrappy team and you don't have to have this 2019 football level of talent.
We do it with sports all the time. Can you win with 2 different groups, 2 different, 2 different cores? And it's in college football. It's, can you win with a different quarterback? If Kirby never wins another title, we'll say, well, could he only win with Stetson Bennett as his quarterback? As wild as that is
he a Stetson Bennett merchant? The people are asking. It's like Jimbo and Jameis, bro. What's he doing without Stetson Bennett?
Yeah. So for Jay Johnson to win after the pieces that obviously we knew were a huge part of that team 2 years ago, and to win with such a different cast, it does deserve so much respect. It really does. It is not an easy thing to do when you have 2 generational players with Cruz and Skeens and the things that they're already doing to be able to replace that type of production and to get back to have a team that's hungry enough and can do all those things. It is so hard to get to that place and win in Omaha. And I thought LSU felt a little bit more inevitable watching it, and maybe I'm a bit off because of what happened in the Arkansas game. Hug a hog, just devastating.
I love that Arkansas team, man. That is the most fun team that I've watched one of my teams compete against. I have so much respect for them. I don't know why they played Great Day to Be Alive in the background of that. That was terrible. But watching those guys sob just broke my heart because I really respected Arkansas, and I kind of didn't feel that way about Coastal. I wish the Arkansas LSU series had been the championship.
Kind of felt like the championship in a way.
Yeah.
Especially when Skip gets tossed first inning. I don't really feel a whole lot of sympathy for him. I don't really feel a whole lot of sympathy for the umps in that situation. Wouldn't have liked to see that from, just because that's always going to be brought up. But yeah, LSU in the midst perhaps of a remarkable run. And I would agree with you. It is the class of college baseball right now. Can't really dispute it. All right. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. There's a reason people always say SGA so that they don't fumble over his name like I just did. Him winning a title to cap off one of the best individual seasons ever in NBA history is pretty wild when you consider where he was starting off at Kentucky. I think he was he the 6th highest rated recruit in that Kentucky class? I mean, didn't start off the year as a starter on that team. And I remember by, was it late January, early February, feeling like he's the best player on this Kentucky team and he might end up being the best player in the SEC. I felt like I was extremely high on SGA during that run. Kentucky got to the Sweet 16, lost to Kansas State that year. But I remember feeling like I was as high on him as someone could be. To think that he's at this place now is wild. It is
I'm actually
so
right there with you. I
wild.
don't mean to interrupt you, man, but that was when I was covering the Magic, and I wanted the Magic to draft him instead of Mo Bamba, and that was my drum I was banging. It wasn't a hot take. I felt kind of like I felt with Alvin Kamara, where it's like I watched this guy a ton in college, and I think there's a lot that he could do at the next level. I don't think you guys are really seeing what this guy is. Now, again, to your point, our projections of a player that we've liked, it's probably double that in terms of leading the league in scoring, doing all of what he's done. So even the biggest fans of him are being impressed by him.
And maybe there are certain people that'll always push back just because the athleticism isn't where some other NBA superstars are at. That's fine in my book.
Him and Nikola Jokic running the league, brother.
Right? It is just truly wild to see that. Yeah, it's like at a time in which athleticism and threes are so rewarded, what SGA does is just not typically what you would expect to see from a superstar at this level. But man, what a year. What an unreal year. And as fun as it would have been for our household to watch the Pacers win, I have a certain level of appreciation with SGA, man, because that dude has put in the work, and he's, gets that moment where he gets to carry the championship trophy through the parade. He's got like 12 abs that are showing because he's just shirtless with the Canadian flag draped around him. He's got, this is the owner saying he's the best player to ever wear this uniform, which shots fired KD, but you can't really push back on that, right? With what he's done. It's incredible. And I do find myself wondering how many titles is that guy going to win. Feels like a lot. Feels like so many.
I mean, Sam Presti, same thing, right? Where it's like he tried and tried and tried. He got, I think we could call it luck when we draft 3 MVPs. I don't think that's supposed to happen. But, I mean, the scouting department was incredible. They had, Baca and Steven Adams and those guys. And then they just kept trying new things. Paul George, like Oladipo. They, went back and forth. Chris Paul. And then suddenly they were like, you know what? We're finally going to be bad. And they ended up with this list of players that were not exactly the MVP or the big names. They had 2 Jalen Williamses, but that's what you need to win a championship is guys that all buy in and play one way. And this team's been a joy.
Did they get the 2 best non-Paolo players in that 22 draft with Chet and Jalen Williams? J-Dub, my bad. J-Dub.
Oh, man. I mean, it just depends on. I love Paolo. Obviously, I'm not trying to tear him down, but it just depends on what type of team you're trying to build with Chet. Because Chet's a one-of-one type of guy. I think on that team, they might rather have Chet.
Yeah, pretty remarkable though. Pretty remarkable to see something like that. And yeah, as much as I wish the Halliburton injury hadn't happened and we got an entertaining Game 7, I do feel like just unbelievable amazement every time I watch what SGA has become in the NBA, and that guy is going to be one of the faces of the league for probably the next decade. All right, well, as I have mentioned many times, NBA's over, but Dabble, that's going to be the place that's going to hook you up. Promo code SDS2, $25 bonus cash, no deposit required. Use that if you're getting into the MLB action now that we have reached, I don't want to say the dead days of summer, because we're not in August yet. That's certainly not dead in the college football calendar, but for the pro sports calendar, we are at the dead days of it. And make sure that you are doing that with the good folks at Dabble. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You watch all this great content on YouTube, every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube, as well as our interviews. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ Guerrero, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.